Hey everyone, we've got a great guest today, Shally Steckerl.
Yeah.
Shally is a sourcing extraordinaire, all areas. We're going to talk about sourcing. We're going to talk about what Shally's up to, and just give an update. Shally, let me know what you've been doing.
Recently transitioned out of a job I was at for 2 years. So I'm on the market, shopping around, taking my time and looking at some opportunities. While I'm doing that, I am taking a chance to reconnect with my network that I've been neglecting over the years.
Let me ask you about sourcing and stuff too. I know we'll deep dive into this stuff, but there's been a lot of tools that have been coming out for sourcing with Hire Easy, and I don't even know all the names, but so give everyone in the audience, if they're HR managers or HR even directors, a lot of times they're working in manufacturing and or different positions, but they don't get to the conferences, so they may never have met you. So give them an idea of what Shally and a sourcer would do and what kind of roles you would focus on.
Yeah, so I've been lately in technology, which is software engineers, data scientists, is what I've been doing a lot lately. Sourcing in general is really only necessary and gets involved when there are either not enough applicants coming in already
Mm-hmm.
to your
Mm-hmm.
jobs. So you have
Yep.
them posted, you have them advertised, but you're just getting insufficient traffic, or where the applicants are just not a match. So you might be getting a lot of flow, but they're all not qualified. Then there could be a lot of reasons for that. I don't want to diagnose that
Yep.
on the call here. There could be reasons that have to do with maybe it's just the wrong job posting, wrong job description, etc. So think of it as low or no candidate flow. If there's
Yep.
low or no candidate flow, then you need sourcing to go out and find people. Or if you have just the wrong candidate flow, then you need sourcing to go out and find people. So our job is to engage with candidates that are probably just not looking for an opportunity, or they're not looking at your company as a potential employer.
Yeah.
They might be looking elsewhere, but just not with you.
And where do you say you're sourcing someone and often they may be the passive or active seeker, but what tools would you use now? And I remember the old days, there were no tools. We were talking about you're teaching people Boolean at conferences and how to use X-ray on, I don't even, Google probably wasn't even out
Google,
back
yeah,
then.
and
Yeah.
Alta Vista, yeah,
Inktomi, throw that one in there too.
yeah, that's right. That I think is right around that same time. Yeah, Yahoo Search back when the tool really is the tool. It should be, I would say, multiple tools. Part of the sourcer's job is to not only go where candidates are that aren't already applying, but also to use the tools that the recruiters aren't using. Because if the recruiters are already doing, for example, a very mainstream tool today is LinkedIn Recruiter.
Yep.
If the company is fortunate enough to be able to afford a LinkedIn Recruiter account, and don't be fooled, it's expensive. If you already have a LinkedIn Recruiter account and you have recruiters that are doing that, then there's really no reason for the sourcer to go and pound around the same stomping grounds that
Cool.
the recruiters are
Yep.
already doing. That doesn't matter. However, if the recruiters don't have it, or if they just don't have time to use it, then the sourcers do go there. But they also go to other places that have resumes. And the first place, quite frankly, that most recruiters and sourcers skip is your own data. Inside of your own data, many organizations have an applicant tracking system that captures the resumes of all the people that are interested in jobs. And a lot of people, a lot of recruiters overlook that as a source. They're used to an applicant coming in for a specific job. They post this job, they get a resume for this job, but they don't really think about going back to revisit that resume for other jobs in the future. So that really should be the number one source that proactive recruiters and sources go to. And then
And
beyond that,
let me ask you about that one.
yeah,
And I think regardless of the type of role, if you've got an ATS and you got candidates that could be 3 weeks old, 3 months old, whatnot, I would gather in the type of sourcing you're doing, but others, how do you reach out to those? And the reason I ask this question is that I think there's the behavior that I want to change, or I think that can be changed, is that again, people don't go into the database and then they think they're
right.
old, so
They're
they're not going to
obsolete, which
call.
they're
Like,
not.
yeah, they're, and you can't send them an email because they're not going to respond, or you can't pick up the phone because they're not going to respond. But if it's a senior level position, and a very hard to find role. You don't care if they applied 6 years ago. Like, but how would you reach
And
out
they
to
should be
them?
further along unless they've made
Yeah.
a considerable career change. But it's a fair question. Most of the time, email addresses are provided with resumes. And usually those addresses are a personal address that you probably have kept and will keep for a while, shally@gmail, right?
Hmm.
So that's a very good first start. And then second to that, in modern times, last, I would say at least the last 10 years, most resumes, people include their cell phone number, which is very portable, even if you move from one city to another, and most people don't get a new phone number. Although the younger generations, the Gen Zs and Gen Ys, are abandoning the use of a phone number, the digits of a phone number, as an identifier. They, for example, if people that are buying disposable plans or they're buying SIM chips, they are not tied to a phone number. They have their Apple phone, their iPhone that they bought, but they just put in a new SIM card and run out of minutes until they run out. Then they throw it out and buy a new one, right?
Ah,
And so
yeah.
their phone number changes, but what doesn't change is their Snapchat account, their Facebook account, their Instagram account. So the third way, besides your email and your phone number, the third way would be through a messaging platform like that. Instagram has private or DM. Twitter, which is now X, is not a very good destination anymore, but Instagram definitely, Snapchat and Facebook, WhatsApp.
Yep.
Those are all systems that are not necessarily tied to your phone number, or where if your phone number changes, you can still reach someone. But I got to tell you, this is long. You and I used to do this, and it's long forgotten. Pick up the phone and call. You've got a phone number. It's more than likely a cell phone number, unless it's out of date because they switch SIM cards. It's probably going to go to their voicemail. And yes, I know it's going to go to their voicemail because I personally don't answer my phone when I see a caller ID that I don't recognize, and probably most people don't. But if I call and I leave a message and I follow that up with a text or an email, that connects me with that person in a
And
different way. I'm not a
and it's
telemarketer.
three channels. And it's three
Right.
channels.
I'm no
Yep,
longer
that's the
just a
thing.
telemarketer. I'm no longer
Yep.
just a spammer. If I emailed you and called you, I'm probably neither, right? So pick up the phone and call it. Just leave a message. Hey, it's Shally. I'm calling you about an opportunity. Give me a call back. So that's how I would do it, especially if we have their resume. If
Yep.
we don't, then it's usually, if it's LinkedIn, it's usually up to being able to send a LinkedIn message within LinkedIn.
Email. Yep.
But the response rates for those have deteriorated
Yeah.
significantly. And I don't know if you saw the most recent update. They changed the inbox on LinkedIn. So when you're on LinkedIn and you go to your messages,
Yep.
right, there's now tabs a la Outlook, where
Yep.
you have focused and other,
Yep.
or, the messages from recruiters often go to the other, which are now, of course, not being read. So
Yeah.
that's partly where that.
And I'm in LinkedIn all the time, and I didn't even know this. And I was like playing around, and because it doesn't look like a tab, it's just the word other, and it's totally blind. You're blind to it. There's
What
no
does
other
that mean? What is
visual
other?
identification to it. I'm glad you mentioned texting in that the three stack of channels too,
Mhm.
because I teach, especially in the hourly space,
You absolutely
where
have to.
yeah, I use this example in my teaching is if you're trying to hire Chris, a forklift driver, he applies for a job at 4:30 on Monday. And you're Shally, you come in on Tuesday morning, Chris's resume on Indeed, where he applied, and he has a perfect track record, no safety issues. And you pick up the phone to call him. Chris is driving a forklift. He doesn't have his phone on him. In fact, he
Not
can't.
while he's at work, he can't, right? He
Yeah.
shouldn't.
Yep. The
He might
best
have
way
it to play
in a
music with or
locker.
something, but
Yeah.
not while he's working. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's buzzing in a locker somewhere. So
It's
what I teach, and then of course if Shally's really good, then Shally's going to say, okay, maybe I'll try to reach Chris tomorrow, but I'll do it at 3:30
at a
instead.
different time.
Yeah. But that's the normal plan. And then it's the game of how many people can I keep following up with and keep that organized. What we've been teaching is you send a text message asking the candidate, you were Chris. I'd say, hi, Chris, this is John, a recruiter from Acme Company. I saw you recently applied for a position. Would you like to schedule a time to talk? And just reply back, yes.
Yep.
it has a call to action, and they can
That
read
way,
that.
after hours, they can just go yes, and then boom.
Yep. And of course, on our end, we connect it right to a calendar. So it's fully automated calendaring. So you save all the time. So what kind of tools are out there in recruiting spaces? The HR manager who needs to hire someone and doesn't have LinkedIn access and doesn't,
No, it really isn't.
yeah.
No,
So what are kind of
yeah.
tools would they see?
So
And I
if
guess
you,
you can go across the board, like
yeah,
everything
I see what you're
from
saying.
the tops to the big one to the small ones.
If you're a large enough employer and you can afford to have a dedicated sourcing team, then you have people whose job it is to essentially bring in and fill the top of the funnel with inbound applicants that you went out and sourced. So you're doing
Yep.
outbound outreach to bring them in. You're
Yep.
doing outbound to have them come back. But not
Yep.
every company has the ability to do that. You might be able to hire one sourcer if you have, say, 4 to 7 recruiters and have a sourcer that supports some of the more critical initiatives. But if you only have a handful of recruiters, or if your HR generalist is also in charge of recruiting in the field and all that, you really don't have, first of all, you probably don't want to have a LinkedIn recruiter account because it's extremely expensive
Mhm.
and you're not going to have the volume of hiring to justify,
Of course. Yeah.
6-figure tool. So for those, there are smaller tools out there. For example, you've got your Seek Out and Hire tool that are lower price point than something like LinkedIn and offer the benefit of being able to provide you the contact information. So you have the person's profile as well as their email address, which you wouldn't get from LinkedIn. And below that, so that's at a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year tool that you could afford if you have a few hires a year. And
And
below
Hire
that,
Tool, that's now Hire Easy, right?
Hire Tool it's now Hire
Yep.
Easy. It used to be Hire Tool, is now Hire
Yep.
Easy. Right.
Yep.
That's right. And
Shannon would be all over me on that one.
if you didn't correct me on that, yeah, so she'd probably be all over. I'm gonna get a call from her next.
Yeah.
And so those are the kinds of tools that you could use sporadically, right? You don't have to be on there all the time. It's on demand. You go in there, you do what you need to do. Beside that, the other types of solutions, now you start getting into what people call programmatic advertising, where you
Mhm.
you have a small budget for spending for advertising, and you want to make sure that your job postings are going to the right places. That's incredibly difficult to manage as a one-person shop,
Yeah.
right? Because you have to find a dozen different job boards. You're looking at forklift operators. You want to go to where forklift operators shop for jobs, and that's not going to be LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Maybe it is. I don't know. What do I know? But
Yeah.
they're probably way better destinations for people that are looking for frontline worker type of positions. So you want to make sure that it's going there and it's being posted in the right way, the right messaging, and you are making the most use out of your $200-300 that you want to spend per ad. So that's another tier below that.
Mhm.
And then aside from that, the next level is just essentially using some basic Google searches to identify people that might be, for example, you want to hire a veterinarian to backfill your small veterinary shop. You're the main guy or gal, and you need to grow and you want to hire an assistant veterinarian. You might just want to jump on manta.com or Yelp and do a search for veterinarians in the area and just start calling a few of them, literally do some cold outreach.
I love it. That's great advice, because a lot of times I want my audience to have like stuff they can use like right away. And that's great. Like Manta, just so everyone knows, is basically a
The
yellow
business
pages.
direct, exactly. Yep.
Yep.
But it's got the name of the person and the contact information, and optometrists and pharmacists and veterinarians and mechanics and print shop operators. Those kinds of white collar, blue collar, frontline type of workers are going to be on there, where you wouldn't necessarily find those elsewhere. But you can't expect to find commercial drivers with 18-wheeler cross-country driving experience. For that, you got to go to 18wheeler.com.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's great. And let me ask you about this one too. So say you were manufacturing in the Midwest, Rust Belt states is pretty tough right now. And I think
it is. I've run into that a few times.
it's difficult for a couple of reasons. From a macro reason, I think with the culture of the Midwest and if we use the term like first in, first out, um, I think it's super hard to get someone to change a job in this market where they've been working for a company for
Yeah.
5 years and they've consistency. They may have even gotten some raises to get into a better comp range now.
Yeah.
I just think it's super hard to get someone to move.
It is. There is a loyalty, still a loyalty to your employer amongst that population, not just in the Midwest, but just in general, blue collar, where they just don't feel like job hopping is a good way to go. So that's definitely a reason. The other reason is the population density. In some of those towns, they may be the factory, the biggest one, or maybe there's 5 or 6 factories. They're the dominant one. And so where are you going to get your talent from? People are going to have to come from another town to drive in.
So your roles, your last one's been doing tech and probably a whole bunch of security and machine learning and all that stuff.
And then corporate roles. I hired our privacy attorney, chief counsel, chief privacy counsel, CTO, all kinds of positions like that. So it could be leadership or executive. Yeah. You know what? An evolution I see happening right now. Sourcing, way back when you and I first started talking about this, sourcing used to be about learning how to tickle the search engine and manipulate it to continuously adapt you change a keyword, you could call it the iterative method or the scientific method or the pendulum approach. When you try this and it's too many results, you try that. So that kind of continuous evolution and iterative technique plays really well with prompt engineering today. So I think where a lot of folks that are good at changing and experimenting their searches to get the right results are also going to be good at changing and experimenting their prompts to get the right results. Because generative AI, first of all, generative AI is here to stay, but it still is very early on. There are a lot of problems with it. One of the biggest problems with generative AI is that the data that all of these companies use, Claude, Bard, or Genesis, Copilot, and ChatGPT, they all use Common Crawl, the same data set. But it's applied differently. Copilot sees it this way, Claude sees it that way. It's about how do we massage it, tickle it, manipulate it to get to that prompt by multiple steps or changing it. So I think that's going to be an evolution of sourcing. Sourcers will begin to recognize that prompt engineering is actually a skill that they're primed for. And might start getting into that area. So that's something that I think is, if you want to be forward thinking. Another area being very forward thinking here is it's not just about necessarily the generative AI in particular, but it's all these tools that are going to come up. And you've already, I think you and I touched on this when we were at HR Tech, you've already started to see every company out there that has any kind of technology offering now has, and now with AI, it's like they added and now with AI labeled to it. And again, it's all coming from the same stuff, but again, it's their own different interpretations. And so the evolution is going to be, how do we leverage all of these different technologies to talk to each other, to conform to our workflow? Because there's going to come a point where we have too many of them and we can't change our workflow to meet every new tool. You could do that once or twice. You might have, a lot of organizations changed their recruiting workflow to adapt to LinkedIn. But that was a doozy. That was a big one. They're not going to adapt their workflow every time the next technology comes up, and now with AI. So that utilization, tool maximization, reducing friction, maybe you call it project management, maybe you call it just maximizing technology. That's another part of it. If for the people that are in this niche that sometimes is called sourcing or research or whatever, just like social media had an impact, right? It wasn't that long ago that we were talking about social media recruiting and social recruiting, but you know why that went away? You don't hear about it much anymore. Do you know why that went away?
No.
The reason that we don't talk about social recruiting and social media recruiting is because there is no such thing as social media anymore. It's just media. Just like we used to talk about television advertising, and then it was just advertising. Before that, we used to talk about radio advertising, and then just became part of it. So print advertising, ad radio, now it's just advertising. Ad TV, now it's just advertising. Ad social, now it's just advertising. So that's why we don't talk about it, because it's just now part and parcel of everything that we do. But this other thing is definitely an add-on. This is like social media technology, social media generative AI, social media tools that allow you to customize your emails so that when you're sending out your messages in your sequences, every message is slightly different and adapted to that person's profile. You as a human can't, theoretically, you cannot go in there and look at 1,000 profiles and adapt 1,000 outbound emails to target each individual profile, but ChatGPT can.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Have you been did you do a lot of outbound campaigns, email campaigns as a sourcer? And not just one, but like tickle campaigns and repeated
sequencing.
campaigns,
Yep.
sequencing.
Sequences with branching logic, right? If they don't reply to this one, they send this one, up until even combining it with text messaging. Some of the tools out there like Gem allow you to send an email, wait a few days, send a text message, and if they reply, then you drop off the sequence. If not, then you continue to a LinkedIn message, and so on.
Yeah.
So multi-channel sequencing, definitely.
If you're doing high volume recruiting and you've got candidates in your applicant tracking system that applied months ago, but for whatever reason never responded back, didn't get into the queue, maybe never completed an application or whatnot,
right?
That's a perfect example of how you might be able to use. You've got their email address, you've got their phone number.
Absolutely.
Are there other tools? Gem's a standalone, like a big platform. Are there other tools that you've seen recruiters use, and say companies that are hiring 100 people a year? So it's not really big volume, but
right.
Big enough volume that you might have a recruiter sets up their own campaigns. Are there tools out there that might be able to do that?
There is one in particular. There's three, but let me give you the first one.
Okay.
Jobin, JOBIN.cloud.
Okay.
I love these guys. I love this tool. It's unfortunately, sadly, when you go in and you log in, it looks like 1990 wants their UI back. And it's
Windows 3.1 all over, huh?
It's initially discouraging. I don't know why, but the look and feel of it just feels very old school. However, it's just the iconography and everything. However, it's extremely powerful. And what it's able to do is it's able to do branching logic with all kinds of decision statements. Like, for example, if the person is first degree with me, send them message number 1. If they're second or third degree, send them an invite to connect instead of a message. If we have their email, send them message number 2. So you can have one sequence that has a lot of flexibility. And if you include the ability to track as a CRM, to do sourcing and find contact information all together, it's only about $150 a month. And that's something that you could afford as a solo office. Now, there are some benefits to having a team account. I'm not saying Jobin is not for enterprise. There are definitely enterprise applications because you can have job descriptions and other stuff like that. But for an individual solo user, that's a really good tool. Second one that I would point to that is Kula, Kula. They have
Kula. Okay.
K-U, 2 U's, Kula.
Got it.
Similar to the ability to send LinkedIn messages like Jobin does, but the limitation is that the branching logic just isn't there. So they have the ability to do some LinkedIn messaging. They just don't have any texting though. So it's email and LinkedIn. That's it. So those two come to mind. And the third one is Nebula. Nebula.ai is not a messaging platform. They do have messaging, but they're not selling you that. They're not like, come to us so that you can do messaging. What they do is they're doing, do you know when a long time ago we talked about finding people for hiring managers that just kept saying, that's not what I want, that's not what I want, that's not what I want. And
you're dangling around. You're like,
what is it that if that's not what you want, what do you really want? So Nebula has solved this because they essentially take this, the way I used to think of it is, if I have 10 resumes of people the hiring manager did like, how can I use those 10 to find others like it? Find me more like this.
Interesting.
So they've taken that concept and applied machine learning. So what it's able to do is you give it the generic, what you're looking for, or you give it an example resume, and then it's able to extrapolate. I'll give you an example of, you probably never heard of this marketing tool called Braze. It's a modern day app optimized HubSpot. If you take HubSpot and add like ASO, app store optimization, and other things like that, then Braze is the new hot tech. The thing is, a lot of people who are working on Braze, they've only been doing it for 6 months or a year. It's not on their resume yet.
Yep.
What's on the resume is HubSpot, but not Braze. I needed to find somebody that was a Braze engineer, and I went into Nebula and I just gave it the profile of a person that I had talked to, the hiring manager really liked. And then it came back and it gave me 10 suggestions. 9 out of those 10 were people I would have never, in a million years, I would have never found or even thought about finding, because their description of their job was completely different than what I had originally put in as my requirements. And as a result of this, my eyes were opened to a whole new universe of candidates that I'd never considered. What I found was that Nebula made the correlation between Braze engineers and HubSpot engineers, and the language that those two have in common is
Very similar.
email engineer.
Oh yeah.
And
Okay.
I'd never even heard of the job title email engineer until that moment. And so I'm looking at 9 of these profiles and they're like email engineer, email automation engineer, email programmer, email programmer. That was another one. And I'm like, what is this? And so I went to LinkedIn and I typed in email engineer and boom, all
there
these
they
resumes.
are.
None of them had Braze on
Wow.
their profile. None of them had it. So
Yep.
Nebula has taken that thought of extrapolating, connecting the dots, that humans are really good at connecting the dots, but only on things that they can see. When you take the power of generative AI, you can take hundreds of thousands or millions of documents and connect the dots. Humans can't ever do that. There's no way. You would have to look at a million resumes to start connecting those dots. You and I
Wow.
can connect the dots on 10 resumes, 50
Yep.
resumes, maybe even 100 resumes. And you were talking about the recruiters that get really good at something. They get really good at identifying, say, product managers, and they know exactly what a product manager looks like. But Nebula is doing that with every job title.
Wow. And yeah, this Nebula, this sounds amazing. Is so, because I just think of even going back to the ChatGPT conversation, where, so I was gonna ask you this before. Do you think ChatGPT can, but I think Nebula is doing this basically, is for a recruiter, could they use ChatGPT even as a sourcing tool? Because now they have, with a 4.0 license, $20 a month, it goes, scans the web. So you can go back, but you don't even need Boolean in many cases.
You don't need
because
to use that
as
anymore.
long as you need,
You just
but
need prompt engineering.
You have to learn how to build the prompts. And now you have a tool that is $20 a month per licensed user.
Yep.
Pretty
and the
amazing.
Questions that you can ask there are very different, and you have to learn this new language of asking questions. If you go in there and ask it to find candidates for you, it's going to be like, what are you talking about?
What is a candidate? Yeah, exactly.
But if instead, here's a nifty little takeaway, you go in there and you say, who are some of the Golang developers at Microsoft? Or what are the names of 10
So perfect.
Golang software engineers at Microsoft? It'll go out and it'll look through its data and go, hey, these are people that look like they do this. Here's the names. Now it's giving you the people. But if you say, find me some candidates, it doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And even if it did understand what a candidate is, it's going to be like, I don't know if these people are candidates because they're not applying for jobs.
Or are they a candidate for, a public office or something like that, right? Yeah. Yeah.
But if you say specifically what you want, find me, make a list of here's another one. Make a list of the top 10 companies that hire people from NVIDIA. And then you got a list of the 10 competitors from NVIDIA. And then you say, use that list of the top 10 companies and find me names of people that are software engineers that work for those companies, and produce a list of 20 or whatever. It'll give you a list of 20. So you are essentially sourcing.
Shally, have you written up any prompts or made that public and shared that and shown people how to do that before?
I do. I actually have a ChatGPT basics course inside of my LMS where I talk about exactly these examples of non-traditional applications.
So do you have a URL or do you?
Yeah, TSI.com. TSI University.
TSIuniversity.com. And
There's a course in there for ChatGPT. I've got it discounted now for $49 because I'm creating an advanced version of it. So I want people to go ahead and still be encouraged to get the basic, and then I'll just give them a coupon to upgrade to the advanced.
That's awesome. All right, thanks so much, Shally. And so we got TSI University, Is that .com? And then where else can anyone reach out to you?
I've got my srcn.co/me, which always takes them to my profile. So that's srcn.co/me. And there they'll see my LinkedIn,
One
like
of those
link in
LinkedIn
bio
things.
kind of
Yep.
thing. Yep.
Got
Except
it.
it's also got my book and the show, the podcast that I do,
Oh, awesome.
and a little bit of like my origin story, if you will.
Awesome.
That
That's
kind of
great. And I'll have to take a look. All right. Well,
yeah.
thanks so much. And I know
Been
we're going to
great.
do it
Appreciate
again
it.
at some other point too.
Thanks, man. That was fun.